Good evening, I'm Dennis Ward. Welcome to APTN National News. A planned return to office for a Grand Chief in Manitoba who is on leave following a fight outside of an Ottawa bar is now on hold. The Southern Chiefs organization says the planned January 6th return of Jerry Daniels is now extended until a Chiefs in Summit gathering takes place in January. The Southern Chiefs organization represents 33 First Nations in Manitoba. On December 20th, 8 of those chiefs passed a motion calling for a Chiefs Summit in early January before a decision is made for a return to office for Grand Chief Daniels. The 8 First Nations that make up the Southeast Resource Development Council Corp said if a summit was not held, they would withdraw membership from SCO. On Sunday evening, SCO confirmed a summit will now be held and will focus on the apology recently offered by Daniels and identify the best path forward. Daniels previously said the incident outside of a bar in Ottawa was, quote, a wake-up call. He said he was committed to a treatment plan that includes both traditional ceremony and an alcohol treatment program. SCO did not respond to questions about when the meeting will be held. The Yukon Water Board is allowing the receiver for a contaminated mine site in the Yukon to temporarily discharge cyanide-impacted water into a nearby creek. PricewaterhouseCoopers is the receiver for Victoria Gold's Eagle Gold Mine. The mine is located on the First Nation of Nacho-Nyakdun's traditional territory. Earlier this year, a heap leach failure caused cyanide-laced material to be released into the surrounding environment. The mine's receiver says the site's current facilities cannot treat cyanide-impacted water to the standards in its license. The amendment will be in place until the spring when upgrades to its facilities are complete. Nacho-Nyakdun said in a submission to the board last month it wasn't happy about the proposed amendment, but understood the rationale behind it. The U.S. Senate has unanimously approved the Truth in Healing Commission on Indian Boarding School Policies Act of 2024. The bill would establish a federal commission similar to Canada's TRC to investigate the country's Indian boarding school system. The bill was first introduced in May 2023 by Democrat Senator Elizabeth Warren. In addition to investigating the system, it would develop policy recommendations and implement a healing process for survivors, descendants, and communities. A bill of the same name was introduced in the House of Representatives by Democrat Sharice Davids in February this year. On Friday, the Senate bill passed with support from both sides. Next, it must pass in the House of Representatives to become law. Indigenous advocacy organizations, including the National Congress of American Indians, are calling for swift action from House leadership. Senator Brian Schatz is the chair of the Senate Committee on Indian Affairs.
It is no small task for us to confront the unbearable burden of our history. Yet to stand before that history in silence, to remain idle while these wounds persist, is to turn away from one of the most fundamental acts of justice and healing that we are in a position to do something about. We have to turn the light on and let the truth out. And this is the work that we've done in the Senate now, and we do hope the House takes action and passes this incredibly important measure into law.
The Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs have hired a law firm to look into systemic racism against First Nations people by the Winnipeg Police Service. This comes just days after an alleged altercation between as many as 5 officers and 1 First Nation man last Thursday. With more, here's T.R. Wheatley.
That's the million-dollar question.
Chad Panting is a lawyer hired to look at whether racism played a factor in how Winnipeg police handled an incident involving Larry Beardy's son, Chad Beardy, during the early morning hours of December 19 on Furby Street.
I think racism is a big factor. Racism, and people don't understand. They're deliberately ignorant.
Beardy of the Tatasqueyak Cree Nation has the support of the Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs, who have asked Panting of Cassidy Law Firm to look into the arrest of Chad Beardy. Winnipeg police say they received a report of a male and female arguing where one of the parties was armed with an edged weapon and attempting to stab the other. Police say when they arrived, the male was outside and armed. After he refused verbal warnings, he began walking towards them when a taser was used. The family and the lawyer say different, saying Chad didn't have a weapon in his hand when he was tased.
Why does the police force 5 people deliberately injure my son? Now, I don't know. My son works in construction. I don't know what condition he's going to be in after this. You know, if he'll be able to go back to the career that he loves to do.
The Independent Investigation Unit of Manitoba is investigating. In their media release, information pretty similar to what WPS said. There was one new detail that said the male had fallen on ice. The family's lawyer disputes this.
He didn't fall on ice. They physically assaulted him and broke his leg in 2 places. His fibula and his tibia have been completely broken, and he's now awaiting surgery.
The father admits Chad and his partner have history with domestic violence, but says no one called the police that night. The lawyer says even so, Chad's identity was never known.
He wasn't even identified at the incident. So how would the police be able to factor that into their assessment of the risk? It was based on his appearance.
Once in custody, Chad Beardy was taken to hospital where he waited up to 16 hours for medical attention. Chad is awaiting surgery and his court appearance is February 11. In the meantime, the law firm is working on filing complaints with the Law Enforcement Review Agency. A civil claim against police will also be filed. And both the family and Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs remain adamant that a national inquiry into police needs to happen. T.R. Wheatley, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
Both the Winnipeg Police and Manitoba's Independent Investigation Unit were contacted, but both say they do not comment on ongoing investigations. Still to come tonight, we'll look back on the year that was in Ontario and on Parliament Hill. Stick around. Welcome back. It was a tough year for Justin Trudeau and his Liberal government in Ottawa. The Liberals were under attack from all sides, including on Indigenous issues. Whether it was funding for child welfare services or searches for unmarked graves, few stakeholder groups were happy with the Liberals by year's end. Here's APTN's Fraser Needham with more.
The year started with a major Supreme Court decision. Canada's top court ruled against Quebec's constitutional challenge of Bill C-92 in early February. This is the law that gives Indigenous communities full control over welfare services that affect their children and families. Assembly of First Nations Regional Chief for Quebec and Labrador, Ghislain Picard, said it was a day of bittersweet emotions.
It's a very beautiful, happy decision by the Supreme Court, but it is also, in a way, a sad day that the well-being and the future of these children has been an issue debated before the courts for the past 4 years and beyond.
Well, Indigenous Services Minister Patty Haida said the ruling recognizes both the legitimacy of the federal law and the right of Indigenous people to manage services that affect their children.
This decision by the Supreme Court to uphold that inherent right, to recognize the legitimacy of federal law, to bolster that right and to place that right in Canadian law, I think is going to have tremendous impact across the country.
Yet for much of the year, First Nations were at odds with the federal government when it came to funding for these very same child services. In July, at an AFN Special Chiefs Assembly in Montreal, National Chief Cindy Woodhouse-Nepenak announced she had signed a $47.8 billion proposed agreement with the Trudeau government for long-term reform in the First Nations child welfare system. The agreement was also endorsed by the Chiefs of Ontario and Anishinaabe Nation. However, it was soon met with heavy criticism from the organizations like the First Nations Child and Family Caring Society, who said the agreement had been signed without enough consultation and funding was not guaranteed if there was a change in government. At another AFN assembly in Calgary in October, Chiefs voted the agreement down.
Sorry, draft resolution number 1 does not carry, so he's defeated.
The federal government was also under fire for not meeting its Jordan's Principle obligations. The principle says First Nations children should be able to get products, services, and supports when they need them. But a Canadian Human Rights Tribunal hearing in Ottawa in September heard the government is now backlogged with tens of thousands of unprocessed requests. A significant number of these requests are urgent and supposed to be processed within 12 hours. The government told the tribunal it's overwhelmed by the sheer volume of Jordan's Principle requests in recent years. But Cindy Blackstock, the executive director of the First Nations Child and Family Caring Society, had little sympathy for this argument.
I mean, governments their job is to do complicated things. Governments, for example, they rolled out vaccines for thousands of people. They collect taxes from millions of Canadians. They do international types of work. All of those things are important. So is meeting the needs of First Nations kids. They've had now 8 years since the order.
The Liberal government was also taken to task for not properly funding searches for unmarked graves related to residential schools. At a press conference in Ottawa on National Day for Truth and Reconciliation, Laura Arndt of the Survivors Secretariat had these words for the Prime Minister.
We've had enough. Promises only matter when you keep them, so keep your promise. Do it for the communities, do it for this country, so that they may know what real reconciliation looks like. And most importantly, do it for the survivors who lived through this nightmare and who for 60, 70, and sometimes 80 years have fought for the truth to be told about those who didn't come home.
The Secretariat said the federal budget had reduced funding for searches from $216.6 million since 2021 to $91 million over the next 2 years. The need for the federal government to provide long-term sufficient and flexible funding for searches was also a key recommendation of Special Interlocutor for Missing Children, Unmarked Graves and Burial Sites, Kimberly Murray's final report released at the end of October. The year ended with Crown Indigenous Relations Minister Gary-Anna Sondegree's announcement in committee that the federal government would not be moving forward on Bill C-53.
as you know, there was a court decision relating to the Métis Nation of Alberta, and there was also a decision by the Métis Nation of Saskatchewan to pull out of that process. And consequently, I'm respecting those two separate but I think related conclusions. And as a result, C-53 will not be moving forward.
The invalid legislation was supposed to formally recognize Métis governments in Alberta, Saskatchewan, and Ontario, but had been facing heavy pushback for more than a year from First Nations on Ontario and the Manitoba Métis Federation, who do not see the Métis Nation of Ontario as a legitimate organization. The bill had been dealt further blows earlier this year when the Métis Nation of Saskatchewan withdrew its support and the court ruled not all Métis communities in Alberta had been properly consulted before the legislation was drafted. Fraser Needham, APTN National News, Ottawa.
Thanks, Fraser. Looking back on 2024, Northern Ontario experienced a year of ups and downs, with stories ranging from the disturbance of an ancient burial ground in the town of Nipigon to the establishment of an Indigenous cultural centre in the city of Sault Ste. Marie. Here's Mike McDonald with more.
This past fall, members of the Red Rock Indian Band marched from their community of Lake Helen to the bridge on the Trans-Canada Highway connecting them with the nearby town of Nipigon, Ontario. They were demanding the return of their ancestors unearthed during excavation for a planned visitors centre for Parks Canada.
It just really hurts that we have to go to this extent to get our word out there. But now it's out there, and hopefully there's be positive changes.
The remains were scattered among various sites, prompting what Chief Odawa called a morbid scavenger hunt for the missing remains. Carbon dating revealed the remains had been there for some time.
It dated between 1404 to 1456, and that's pre-contact, so it was pretty, well, we've been here since the beginning of time. And the ancestors protected the land, and now it's our turn to protect our ancestors.
The community of Netmazagamig Nishnabeg, otherwise known as Pic Mobert, was a topic of discussion in the Ontario legislature this year following a state of emergency declaration. This was due to a series of violent incidents which band officials said stem from the unchecked presence of organized crime due to inadequate policing resources.
Community members are acting on behalf of these organized crimes. They're doing a lot of these violent crimes to other community members.
People are seeing that window and that gap of lawlessness that leads to an environment where people are taking advantage of that situation.
This year's Truth and Reconciliation Day in Sault Ste. Marie included a ceremony at the Royal Canadian Legion Branch 25 to commemorate the construction of a memorial to the former Wawanosh School for Girls, which once occupied the land which now houses the Legion.
For the last 5 years, we've been working with the children of Shinwak. We participated in ceremonies, and they shared their truths with us from the heart and sincerely. And obviously, any person that has a conscience would understand that there's real hurt there from the residential school program.
This space here is really, really nice. I think it's going to be a very sacred place for people to gather in the future. You know, a place where you can sit down, feel calm.
And also in 2024, another step forward in the construction of an Indigenous cultural centre on the grounds of Algoma University, the former site of the Shingwak Indian Residential School.
Makwa is a very special name, meaning the bear, which is a symbol of the healing process that Aboriginal people have in their stories and in their lives. We did a lot of ceremony around the name and seeking the name for such an important part of Algoma University.
Mike McDonald, APTN National News, Sault Ste. Marie.
A special Christmas concert with carols in the Haida language was held in Vancouver. We'll bring you that story and more after the break. Welcome back. Time now for our photo of the day. And our very own Shania Murdoch built a gingerbread version of APTN World Headquarters, and we just had to share this award-winning piece. We all hope everyone has a joyous and safe holidays and all the best in the new year from APTN News. Thanks to everyone who sent us photos this past year, and we look forward to more in the new year. Now let's take a look at tomorrow's weather forecast. Starting on the East Coast, flurries and 2 in Halifax, snow and -7 in Fredericton. -12 with snow in Kuujjuaq, 13 below in Nain. -9 and flurries in Montreal, 10 below in Val-d'Or. Cloudy and -5 in Sault Ste. Marie, snow and 7 below in Ottawa. -3 in Thunder Bay, flurries and 5 below in Sioux Lookout. -3 with snow in Thompson, God's Lake, Norway House and the Paw. 0 with snow in Winnipeg, -1 in Brandon. -2 in Regina and North Battleford. -1 in Meadow Lake and Buffalo Narrows. In northern Alberta, -6 in High Level, cloudy and 0 in Grand Prairie. +1 with snow in Edmonton, 9 above in Lethbridge. 11 above with rain in Vancouver, 7 in Kamloops. 6 in Prince George, snow and +1 in Smithers. -18 with flurries in Old Crow, snow and -5 in Whitehorse. -13 in Yellowknife, 22 below in Norman Wells. -22 with snow in Sax Harbor, 17 below and snow in Paulatuck. -14 in Chesterfield, 5 below in Arviette. -30 in Resolute, 23 below in Joe Haven. A special Christmas concert was held in Vancouver to honor winter solstice. APTN's Tina House was there and has this story.
Check 1 2, check 1 2, check. It's a busy day at the Culture Theatre as preparations are underway for a special night to honor not only winter solstice, but also the Haida language and culture. The person behind it all is Terry Lynn Davidson.
Giraskutsli lalachegans hanuti kiaka di kagels kekawaka huyet di guringe lagutslga. My name is Giraskutsli lalachegans. I'm a member of the Kagels Kegawai clan from Skidams, and I'm really happy to be here today. This is a concert of songs, Christmas carols, and popular Christmas songs that the elders of my community have translated into Haida, the Skidegate Haida Immersion Program, and they really wanted to have these songs shared as a way for the community to learn the Haida language.
Terry Lynn's husband is world-renowned artist Robert Davidson, and he's very proud of his wife for finding a way creatively that amplifies the words of their people, the Haida Nation. With less than a dozen fluent speakers of their language left, Robert says this work is very important for future generations.
We're going through an incredible change because we're losing so many of our speakers. And hopefully this will inspire other people to continue learning the language. I know when they performed in Skidegate, the elders were so tickled to hear their language in the songs she was singing.
These songs are part of a new album by Terry Lynn called Haida Solstice. It features her husband Robert's artwork on the cover called Raven Brings Light to the World. Joining Terry Lynn on this project is singer, songwriter, and producer Bill Henderson, who also happens to be the lead singer and guitarist for the Canadian rock band Chilliwack.
One thing about Christmas music is everyone's
It always gets played and everyone wants to hear something different. They always want to hear something different. Now here's something that's different, and also it is interesting because it's coming from, people are very interested now in Indigenous cultures, you know, and it's growing.
And in just a few short hours, this theater will be sold out for a one-night-only performance. Tina House, APTN National News, Vancouver.
Awesome stuff. That is all the time we have for your APTN National News on this Monday, December 23rd. For much more, of course, you can visit our website, aptnnews.ca. I'm Dennis Ward. Marcy Miigwech, thanks for being with us. We will see you back here tomorrow at 1 p.m. Eastern Time for your first look at the day's news. Have a great night.